Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and
Hello.
together we are ThinkerThemer. We review games from two different perspectives. I'm all about the mechanics and Maggie is all about the theme. And this is part 7 of our series 10, out of 10, where we are attempting to rate all of the board games in our collection on a scale of 1 through 10.
And we're doing it 10 games at a time.
10 games at a time. Yes. And so this is this is going to be 70 games so far. And there's still a long way to go. So never fear, this series may go on forever and ever and ever. But today we thought we'd do a special episode where we feature some of our 2-player only games in our collection. Yes. There are quite a lot of them. So we had a special episode where we did roll and writes. There's still more of those to come. But there's also a lot of head-to-head games, especially during, lockdown, pandemic. Maggie and I spent a lot of time just playing the two of us. So
also while we travel. Like when we travel, we like to usually, they tend to be smaller boxes. As you can see, we're not sort of drowning in boxes this time around. And they are good ones to just pack in a bag and take with you. Have a quick game at the airport or, a hotel or anywhere really.
Yeah, so we love talking about them, and we've got 10 here today, so let's get started.
Should we start with my side?
Yeah.
So the first one is a bit of a classic, and this is Jaipur. So in Jaipur, we take the role of sort of merchants, trading different goods. Now, what we're going to be doing is it's a bit of a set collection. So there's different goods of different kind of colors or types, and as we're collecting them, we're going to have the option of either selling them and getting the first of the point chips we have this sort of stack of point tokens, I guess, that are the first person to start selling, or the earlier trades are going to get the most points. However, you may also be incentivized to hold on to some of those goods and make sure that you have multiple, so 3 or more at the time that you sell, because then you also then get this other bonus kind of multi-sell token that again is going to give you other
depending
advantages.
On how many of a particular good you're selling at a time. So there's that tension of, well, do I want to keep collecting them or do I want to sell them off quick so that I can get the first in that descending stack of victory points? So that is a great point of tension. What about the camels?
The camels. So the other element of this is there are these camel cards. So now the camels, they're not going to help you with the actual selling. You can't really sell the camels. However, when you do have your camels, they allow you to make additional trades or essentially manipulate how many cards you're able to get or goods you're able to get from that central market. The trick about this is you're either going to be getting a good from the market, or you're going to be if you're getting the camels, you have to get all the camels that are displayed on that market. Sometimes you can have a market full of camels. That means that then you end up having to take all of those and get no goods, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the economy of camels is just really hilarious because it is this push and pull of at what point do you want to have the ability to draft multiple cards, because normally you can only draft one from the market. If you have a herd of camels, you can distribute them out and take multiple cards, but then, your opponent is forced to take potentially a whole market of camels, which means then you get next pick of a fresh bunch of cards. So that can be really advantageous as well. So you're trying to time it in terms of when you want to have a fresh market, when you want to take more than one card, but not giving your opponent that opportunity as well. So it's a really cute, fast playing, super easy to teach. This one you can teach, in a few minutes only, and be up and running, and the game is really short.
And it's usually like best out of 3 games, because that's how quickly they play. Or in our house it's just 2 games, because it's just like, and she wins. And it's like, okay, well, that was fun. No third round needed.
Yes. So that's Jaipur.
That's Jaipur. What's your score? Oh, I've put my score on the floor. I'm going to have to... One moment, please.
Also should say that the artwork has changed. There's a new edition of this. Yes. The box shape, I think, is slightly different as well. So if you're looking for this particular box, this is the old edition.
Yes.
I gave it a 7.3. It's a solid little filler, but for me, it's kind of like, well, I'll play it a few times and then I'll have to move on from it. But I enjoy it, and it has a little... it was one of our early games that went into our collection, and so for that reason, there's a bit of nostalgic feelings towards it.
Well, apparently I'm even more nostalgic than you, because I gave it a 7.7. Oh,
wow, that's really high.
Which is very high for something
really
that is fairly abstract. It's just really set collection.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I really actually, I enjoy, and again, this is the kind of the previous artwork. I haven't actually played with the new edition, but I really like the colors in it.
It is
and
very bright.
Yeah, the illustration and the depiction of the items there. And even though I always lose when I'm playing against Amy, I haven't actually played this against anyone else except for Amy multiple times.
Maybe it would be higher in your ratings if you played against
even higher. Yeah, well, it's already higher than you.
Yeah.
Even though you win like every time. But yeah, I always find that I have a very satisfying time every time I play it.
Oh, there you go.
That's Jaipur.
That is Jaipur. The next game is a trick-taking game, and trick-taking games are usually played at a higher player count. This one is just for 2 people. It's called The Fox in the Forest, and this is a little creeper of a game, and what I mean by that is at first when I played it, I was like, okay, and then the more you play it, the more you realize the layers of strategies, the more familiar you get with the different action cards that are in there, and all you're doing in this game is simply playing a card each and trying to win a trick or not win a trick. And the way that it scores is the most interesting, because if you, I believe if you take 0 to 3 tricks, i.e. not that many in the game, you're going to get, maximum points. Or if you get 7 to 9 tricks, you also get maximum points. But if you get too greedy and you take 10 plus tricks out of the total.
You win all of the tricks.
Yeah, you get no points.
Yeah,
so it's this push-pull of looking at how many you think you can win or trying to push your opponent to win more tricks so that they get 0 points, essentially. Yeah. And what's really cool about this game is that every odd-numbered card has a special ability attached to it. And that's going to help manipulate the game, so it will change the trump suit, for example, or it might give you some bonus victory points when you play it, or it might allow you to play to lead the next trick even though you probably shouldn't because you didn't win that trick. So it's really fascinating. The more you play it, I feel like it starts to reveal itself in terms of the strategy.
I like how, with this game, again, it's a trick-taking game. It's not a thematic experience. However, I do feel very cunning, like, a cunning
like
fox.
A fox.
Yeah, in the forest. Kind of going, ooh, I wonder. Because it's all, like, I feel like so much of this game, if not all of this game, is about almost like a little bit of that mind game of, I'm going to try and trick my opponent to take more tricks than they are probably intending to. So then it'll push them over, or all of a sudden finding yourself going, I'm overcommitting. I need to upload.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I lose some of these. And that little element is actually quite fun.
Yeah, and you're not stuck with the cards in your hand as well. There is an ability that allows you to swap out cards with a deck. So that's kind of interesting depending on, if you need to change tact halfway through.
And just the ability also to change the trump suit, which means that all of a sudden, like that whole, you thought, this is easy. I'm going to lose every trick, which is exactly what I wanted. And then that trump suit changes, all of my cards are all of a sudden really powerful, and I don't want that. So it's just such a clever, simple, elegant implementation that means it's just hours and hours of fun.
This is a great one to take traveling. It's very easy to play, on an aeroplane we've played it, or when you're sitting waiting for a flight and that type of thing. I've taken it when I've traveled with a work colleague because it's so simple to teach and it's over really quickly. You can play it when you're in between things. So I really do like Fox in the Forest. I am terrible at it. Even when I'm teaching a new player.
You've gotten better. You're way better at it now. Yeah.
No,
I used to always win this, and I used to feel so smug going, but that's
I don't think
no
I've gotten
longer
better.
the
Maybe
case.
you've gotten worse.
Maybe. I'm open to that possibility. It's plausible.
Fox in the Forest, I gave a 7.5. It's one that I really enjoy, and as I said, I didn't enjoy it as much at first, and it has grown on me. And I just enjoy the fact that it's really easy for other people to get into, and that you really enjoy it. Did you give it a higher score than me?
Yeah, ridiculously high. Again, for another game that's fairly abstract in its play. 8.2 is my score.
That's a lot high, but I knew you loved this game.
I really do. I don't know why. I just really resonate with it. And the artwork is really kind of cool and cute in it, but it's just... I just find it really satisfying.
And you really like trick-taking, so...
I really do.
That is the Fox in the Forest. Next game.
All right. Do you want to go that way or this way?
This way.
Oh, another classic. This is Seven Wonders Duel.
Seven Wonders Duel.
So obviously this is the two-player version of the bigger sibling, Seven Wonders. So in Seven Wonders Duel, thematically what we're doing is we're going to be building our civilization and either trying to vie for, either get the most points through a combination of things. from, like, for example, building our wonders. So we're going to be building, you know, our up to 7 wonders between the two of us. Although we're both kind of aiming to build 4 each, and so that's not all going to happen. But the other ways that you can win this game is if your civilization manages to get either military dominance, this being this little tug of war, little side track where you're kind of moving your token towards the other person and getting benefits along the way, and the person's going, oh no, I need to like push them back, or gaining scientific supremacy. Essentially, it's just a bit of a set collection of all the different science icons and cards. But along the way, like those are kind of like how you can kind of end the game and win the game. Along the way, what I love about this game is you have this in the regular game is this drafting where you're all kind of picking cards in a drafting sort of mode. But here you have this awesome shape, kind of like a pyramid, but they're sort of different shapes where you have some cards that are face up, some cards that are face down. And so as you're kind of getting cards from that, you're having this dilemma of going, hey, that's a card that I really want or need, because it might be a card that I'm going to build and it's going to give me resources that allow me to build other things or build my wonders, or am I going to take the card that I know my opponent wants? So it's more about, or do I want to leave them with something that I know that, you know, is going to be really useless for them?
Or you're providing a path to a card that's really powerful, that's in a lower layer or a future layer in that drafting pyramid. And so that can be bad too, because you can see they only need one more scientific card, and you can see it coming. And so you're constantly like reevaluating, well, if I take that one, then they'll probably take that one, then I'll take that one, and then no, they'll get the card. Yeah. So there's this constant reevaluation of the order in which those cards are going to be revealed and taken. You can also, instead of drafting a card, you can take a card and trash the card and take coins as well. There are 2 main economies that you're thinking about in this game. There's really the resource collection, which is like an engine building component where you're drafting particular cards that give you access to more resources so that the cost of purchasing future cards becomes lower and lower. There's also money in this game as well, which you need, and is really hard to come by. And then, as Maggie mentioned, there's this tug of war military track, and cards that you take that are military based, you just instantly get to move this track up and down, and this tug of war plays out. It loses you money along the way if you let it get too far, but also if you let it get all the way to the end, your opponent wins. And so you're constantly looking at how many scientific cards do they have, how far along is that military track, can I just focus on building my wonders, or do I need to like change my strategy? This is a brilliant game.
It was one of those games that we played a fair bit earlier on, like we're talking years ago when we first got it, and then it didn't get played for a while because obviously we got, you know, busy with all sorts of other games, and then it was one of those that we brought back into the table and like, oh, I wonder if this still stands the test of time. Oh my goodness. It's just so satisfying. And there's so many, I love when there's so many different levers and things that, you know, it's like, okay, this game I'm maybe going to focus on this. I love the fact that even with the resources, the economy of them is you can pay for, obviously you can start kind of generating your engine so that you can build cards down the track using those resources. But if you don't have them, you can purchase those resources. But if your opponent has been generating that engine, that affects the cost that you're having to pay for that. So it's just so many little things.
There's also this, when you've built a card, this engine building element to it that some cards are just going to allow you to access a future card for free. So there's a little symbol on it that says, you know, in future rounds, you'll be able to grab that card for free. And so there's just multiple, like you said, multiple paths to victory. You could focus on just cards that give you straight up victory points. But the issue with this game is you can be doing so well with lots of money and lots of victory points, and then someone just takes you in military, and it's so frustrating, you know, that final card, and you're kind of pushing your luck a little bit because it's like, well, how much do I need to defend myself here, or can I get to the end and win with victory points? So
literally can't let your guard down.
It's so good.
Your guard down.
Yeah,
because it's military.
Yeah. Oh, I got it.
She got it.
Oh, I got it. But 7 Wonders Duel, great game. I gave it 8.9. Obviously that's a really high score. It stood the test of time. It's one I'll play anytime. I do think it errs slightly on heavier gamer. So maybe,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like a light, like filler, let's just get out a 2-player game, but it's not difficult. It's just there's more layers to it. And so it just gives that really satisfying feeling playing a bigger game.
Yes.
Like you get that Euro goodness.
And
it's like in a small box and it's just for 2 players.
I also give it an 8.9. So there
same.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So excellent game. I can't kind of speak highly enough.
It's so good. And it's also on BGA as well, and we play it on there sometimes, which helps with the instant scoring. But yeah, check it out. That is 7 Wonders Duel.
And there's a lot of different expansions as well for it, which we haven't actually delved into.
No, we have, but we haven't delved into, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
we own,
should.
but we haven't actually, they haven't hit the table yet.
Expansions in our lives. So we probably won't be doing an all expansions episode because we're so bad at getting to them. But anyway.
We really are.
The next game that we want to talk about is a 2-player game, well, they're all 2-player games, called Canopy. Actually, I will caveat that and say that there are 3 and 4 player rules in this game, but it has been designed specifically for 2. It says 2 on the box. And in Canopy, you are again drafting cards, but this time you are building out your rainforest and the ecosystem. Part of that is going to be building trees with the beautiful canopies that sit on top, and the other is dealing with weather elements and also the fauna and flora that are going to be in this ecosystem. The most interesting part of this game is the way that you draft cards, because there are 3 piles that you can draft from that are going to be getting bigger and bigger as you and your opponent add cards to each of those piles. What's really cool about it is that you start with the leftmost pile and they're all face down. You're going to pick those up, look at what's in that pile of cards and decide at that point whether you want to take those cards and add them to your ecosystem or if you want to move on to the second pile. If you move on to the second pile, there's no going back. There's no like, oh no, I've just seen what's in the second pile and there's worse cards here and I don't want them. Now I can't go back, so I can only go forward again. So then you're putting down the second pile and then you're looking at the third. At that point, if you don't take the third pile of cards, then you're only getting a single card from the top of the deck that might be good or bad. Could be anything. So do you take, better the devil you know, and take the pile of cards that may actually have some worth to it, or do you take a random one from the top of the deck? And at the end of your turn, you're going to be adding a card to those piles.
Whatever pile you don't take.
Yeah, whichever piles you don't take. And so you can also be setting your opponent up for a more and more difficult decision. So clever. That part of it is just super clever.
Yeah, I think it just makes it so, it just adds that level of like, oh, this is so interesting, or this is that whole, it's almost like choice. It's almost like you're setting a bit of a trap for someone else, but at the same time, you yourself are having to face some tricky decisions and going,
you might have to come back to them and take it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's like there's a mix of stuff in there that I don't want, but there's some stuff that I really want.
And there are a few different things that you can trip over. There are cards that will make you get rid of other cards in the kind of your
forest foliage
that you're building up, and you don't want that to happen because a lot of it is like set collection. So the more of a certain type of card that you get, you could be collecting ferns and you just need one more to make sure that they're not worth 0. But then someone else, your opponent could hate draft and take it because they know that you need it, because your forest floor is certainly open information, so you can see what each other are doing. There's also the canopy cards, which I want to talk about, because you can draft trunk cards that build up your trees.
I really like that. Like visually, how you end up extending your tree.
That's right. But as soon as you get a canopy card, you have to place it on top of one of your trees. And the way that the trees score is that it's going to be the canopy value times the number of trunks that are in your tree. And some of the canopies are 0. So you don't want to get one of those because it's going to 0 out your score for a tree. And so there's just another tripping hazard in the drafting process. So and saying all that, when you play this game, I don't think it feels super tense. This is a game that we really enjoy. It's it feels like quite a long game for 2 players, but it's one where you have a cup of tea, sit down together, and there's not a lot of, a huge amount of this is really like stressful.
Yeah, it's not a stressful game throughout. It's like there's interesting little tensions of like, oh, do I want that? Do I not want that? Let me set this little trap. But it's not one of those where you're like sweating and you're like, I can't. So it actually feels fairly, chill as you're playing, even though the decision space is quite interesting.
Yeah. And it has a nice feeling of building something. Like you start with not much and you end up with this huge forest full of like lots of different cards. There are some that last between rounds and there's some that don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just got a sense of momentum to it that
it also does take a fair bit of table space.
It does take a fair
So
bit
it's not
of
something
table
that you can
space.
play on a plane or like on a tray on a train or anything like that. Like you'd need a good
And it is artwork by Vincent Detrate as well. It is really beautiful.
What did you give Canopy?
I gave Canopy 7.5. So I do really enjoy this game. Always happy to sit down to this game. The one little gripe that I had with it was the iconography. I found that we had to
we did kind of struggle
struggle with it a bit. We had to keep going back to the reference. There is a great reference sheet where you can look at what all the cards do, but it's not super intuitive. I really enjoyed it. I think it's really clever in a lot of ways, and it's definitely more thinky than it appears.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually gave it a 7.8. I am rating all of these higher than you. I'm discovering as we're going through this video.
You do like head-to-head to play games.
I don't tend to like direct confrontation, but all of these games are like even in this one, it's not like take that. Like it's not like mean, or you're kind of. And this is very much about you're creating and you're seeing your foliage and your forest come alive. So maybe I just like playing with you. Maybe that's it. I just don't like sharing you with more people around the table.
Or it could be that all you care about is your turn and a 2-player game comes around quicker.
There's fewer other people to wait around.
That's probably more of it.
It'd be interesting if if we're rating up solos, be like, 10.
Yeah,
10,
exactly.
Like,
all of a sudden Amy doesn't matter so much anymore. Okay, that was Canopy. Which way are we going? This way?
Yeah, we could go this way. Lost Cities. So this is another one that we played quite early, but also like one of the games that we encountered quite early on in our board gaming journey. And we actually, I think we learned this at Meepleville Cafe in Las Vegas.
Time ago, yeah.
So this goes way back, and Lost Cities is again, it's not a highly thematic sort of game.
It's not at all.
Well,
I'm so surprised that you like this game so much.
I really enjoy this game.
This is probably the most abstract game that you love.
And I don't know. And again, so it's like I don't know if it's like. Well, I'll talk about what it is. So in Lost Cities, now I can't remember if like again even thematically you're trying to. I think it's like exploring.
You're going
different expeditions, and you're kind of collecting different maps. I think so. They're like maps of different colors. But really, the way it actually plays out is incredibly abstract. You're just trying to create these sets of these runs, essentially this ascending runs of numbers. But the key thing with them is you're kind of having to like play a card and take a card, and you're either taking cards from the center area, which is where other people have discarded cards, or taking a card from the deck, face down deck. So there's out of all those different numbers, there's a minimum number, a minimum point number that you have to hit. Otherwise, you're in trouble. So it's like as soon as you commit to one of those color columns, you have to be fairly sure that you're going to be able to create that sequence. And you can skip numbers, but then everything has to then be still in sequence.
Yeah.
To get enough points to get you over the line.
Yeah, basically every expedition that you start is going to be worth negative 20 points. That's the cost of going on the expedition. So you want to make sure you can get at least 20 points. Otherwise, it's going to be a negative
That's a better way of describing
expedition. But the game, the main mechanic here is really push your luck because what you have full information of every card in the deck. No cards are removed in this game. Every card is going to be probably is going to be played out in some way. So either you or your opponent is going to get the card. And what you're trying to do is not give your opponent cards that they need, but also keep cards that are going to allow you to continue with the expeditions that you've started. And when you start an expedition, as Maggie said, you better better be sure that you can get that 20 points. But what's interesting about this game is you only have a limited number of cards in your hand at any one time, so you do not know. You can't just keep collecting cards until you've got enough to be sure that you're going to be able to play a run in an expedition. You've got to really commit to one and then hope that those cards come up or that your opponent discards them. So you can imagine if you've got high-powered cards in your hand, such as Maggie started the yellow expedition, and I've got the yellow 9 or the yellow 10, there's no way I'm discarding those out of my hand. And that's where it gets really interesting, because then I don't want to discard them, so they are muddying up my hand, and they're just taking up valuable space for me to collect other cards that I actually need. And so it's this really interesting, like, push and pull of the cards, and it's like I've got a 9 and 10, that's already 19, so maybe I'll start my own expedition in yellow, and now we're going to be competing heavily on this yellow expedition for these cards. Now, there's also a really interesting twist: wager cards.
Little handshake cards.
Wager cards have to be played before you play any card, before you start a run of cards, and you can play multiple wager cards into an expedition if you like, and they are going to double the end value of that expedition, whether that's positive or negative points. So it is like putting more pressure on yourself, you know. So you might play a wager. If you start the game and you've got the 9 and 10 in one color, then you might be like, okay, I only need to get a few more cards and I'm doing really well with that expedition. So I'm going to play a wager card first. So it's just,
and there can be multiple wager cards as well. So it's like you can kind of double down and like,
yeah, and sometimes when you know, don't do very well in expedition, you're like, oh, that was just like negative 40 points or negative 50 points. What was I thinking? And so it's a really, really fun game, even though it's extremely abstract and essentially all you're doing is making runs of cards.
I think it's just the colors. Really, I think like with an abstract game, it's very colorful and it's got like, you know, fun little drawings. You're
gonna lose some like Themer credibility.
I know,
if all it takes is color.
That's fair. And again, this is like a self-discovery thing for me, going, I don't know why. Like for some reason I gravitate towards these colorful, you know,
and it is really competitive
games,
but it's also another one of those games that you like, which is you know, it's a battle of wits and a battle of how much you're willing to push yourself and push the, you know, and stop the other player, but it's not directly confrontational.
You never do something that makes someone else discard a card or like completely mess up their
I also want to talk about one more element of this game that I really love, and it's the timing of the end game. So the game ends when the draw pile is depleted, and remember, on your turn you can either place a card out into the discard or into one of your expeditions, and then you have to draw back up. That's how the game works. But when you draw back up, you can draw from the discard piles or you can draw from the draw pile. And so towards the end of the game, you might have lots of cards that you need to put down into expeditions, but you don't want the game to end. So you start picking up discard cards that you don't even want, to slow down the end of the game.
Messing with time. You're like affecting the time.
Yes, exactly. And I love that. It's just because then you're looking for the turning point at which you start to be like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to get the 6 and 7. I just need to get the 8, the 9, and the 10 out there. And so I just love that. So towards the end part of a round, there's this scrambling that happens, and you're watching, is my opponent going to be able to negate all their negative points? So good. Anyway, I've talked long enough about this.
All right.
Very simple abstract game. Lost Cities, I gave 8.2. I think it is beautiful in its simplicity. I think it's really easy to teach. I actually play this a lot online because it's just super straightforward, easy to get into, and really satisfying.
I gave this an 8.7. Again, how am I scoring so much higher for all these?
I think you just really enjoy the two-player player count.
But also, like, these are two-player games where I feel like I have a lot of agency in the game. Again, and no one is, very rarely is the opponent directly messing with the thing that I've created already. So it's... Well, actually, I can see that there's going to be some exceptions to that already coming up. But we'll see. But yeah, I really enjoy this game. And I don't know how much of that is... Actually, I was going to say, I don't know how much of that is the nostalgia element of... I feel like often the games that we discover earlier on in our board gaming journey or adventure often can have that, they have that nostalgic feel where we can be a bit biased towards them. But
It's
I feel
interesting.
like every
It's
time
either-
I've replayed this, I'm like, I
This is
it's
just
very
it is an
satisfying.
excellent design. For me, this one has less nostalgic value and just a lot of respect for the design of it. I think it's really clever and it's really quick and fun. I was going to say that also there's a recency effect. I feel like when you play games more recently, they also are higher in your estimation. Then there's nostalgic. It's the ones in the middle that have got to watch out. So that is Lost Cities.
We should go to your side now.
Yeah, the next one is Hanamikoji. Now, Hanamikoji is a game that is set in Hanamikoji in Kyoto, where you are trying to get the favor of the geishas. And it is a really interesting game. It's probably one of the most referenced version of a I cut, you choose style mechanic, which is basically when you're kind of giving your opponent a choice that you have manipulated, and then they're going to decide what cards you take and what cards they take. But this game is really interesting because you have a range of different geishas in front of both players in a line, and they have a token on them. And you are trying to get that token to be pulled towards you, and that's to signal that you have gained the favor of that geisha. If you can get 4 geishas on your side, you're going to instantly win the game. But the other win condition is if you get 11 points, and all of the geishas are also worth different point numbers. So that's another way you can kind of manipulate who's in the lead. So that's really interesting. But the mechanics to this game, you have cards in your hand and you've got 4 actions that you can take, but you can only take each action once. And it's your choice what order you do those 4 actions. When you take the action, you're going to flip the token to signal I've done this now. And so that is no longer an option available to me. And that's where the game gets really interesting because the 4 different options are you can choose 3 cards to present your opponent with, and your opponent gets to choose one that they're going to play down on their side of the geishas to, get more favor. And you're going to keep the remaining 2, which gives you an interesting choice as to like which 3 do I want to put up there for choice, because if it's 2 not so great ones and a really great one, the opponent's just going to like, I'll take the great one.
Yeah.
And so, you are essentially giving away a card.
Yeah.
Or there's another action that allows you to create 2 sets of 2 where your opponent is going to get to choose one set and you're keeping the other set. You can put down a card that is going to be secret, and that card will get added to one of the piles at the end of the round. So that's, that could manipulate who wins or who gains favor of the geisha. And there's one where you can just discard cards. And so you're thinking about the order that you're going to do that, and you're thinking about what is your opponent going to give you as well. So there's just all these like really nice choices.
Also, the other element is of a subsequent round. So as those tokens are moving back and forth, they will stay there, and then they're still able to be contested. But once they've moved, so for example, if a token has moved to my side, all I need to do is tie, because when you tie, in terms of the number of cards that you have, the token stays where it is. So at the beginning, if you tie and the token hasn't moved, then no one's kind of winning that favor. But once it's on one side, then for the other person to win it over, and they still can, they have to kind of outwin you, I guess, and they can't just tie. But then at that point, it's like, well, all I'm really aiming for is a tie with this one because it's semi-secure, and so like that adds another kind of element of interest in terms of the dynamics of the game going through.
Yeah.
All right.
Hanamikoji, I gave a 7.2. A lot of people love this game. A lot of people, this would be their number 1 2-player game. I'm not those people. I don't know why. It just doesn't resonate with me as strongly. I don't know if it's the actual I cut, you choose mechanic. We don't have a lot of games that do that, but I don't know if it's that or if it's just, I don't know. I just don't get a sense of huge amount of satisfaction out of it.
Tend to resonate as much with the I cut, you choose.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. For me, it's actually for the first time. Is it for the first time? Is this right? It's a lot lower. It's a 6.5. And I think I just didn't really. And again, I can see why like a lot of people really really love this game. I think it's probably because it's too confrontational in that whole, like I can feel that tug of war a lot more closely, which I don't enjoy as much. And it is quite abstract, even though I really, really enjoy the aesthetic of it. I actually quite like, the colorful cards but yeah, I think that more confrontational element, it makes it sort of feel, rank a bit lower for me.
Totally. It's interesting, isn't it? Why a game just works for some people and doesn't for others.
Well, again, it's like that's why I love going through all of this, like having the channel and not just experiencing games from I'm playing them and I'm enjoying them, but also having to articulate why you're resonating with something or not. This has led to so much self-discovery for me.
Although I feel like I didn't articulate why I don't like it as much anymore, but I just like it okay. It's just a game that I'm like, okay, I enjoy it, I'll play it, but it's not a game that I'm reaching for. Why is it in our collection? I bought it so that we could try it because other people love it so much. Will it stay in our collection? It's one that's just hung around just because it is a classic.
Yeah.
Because so many people love it, and so for that reason, I'm like, oh, maybe I should own it. Is that a bad reason to own a game? I think that's a terrible reason to own a game.
Well, you know me. It doesn't take much for me to be like, call it. Yeah, let's send it off to another.
I want to own this game because everybody owns this game, and
it's the FOMO.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, not even FOMO because it's like it's not missing out if you know what it is.
It's like gamer respect. Like everybody must own this game.
Yeah.
No, I think we'll probably move it on.
That are very similar, which obviously we might cover in later games. Like, is it Battle Line?
Later episodes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So where it's like that's sort of similar. You're kind of buying for those. For those central things. But,
yes. So that is Hanamikoji. Yeah.
Should we come this side?
We should.
You should be talking about this one.
Let me talk about Kahuna. I love Kahuna. So I'll just start with that. Kahuna is a very pure area control game. Area control is one of my favorite mechanics. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that about me. It's a fairly, it's an older game, and in this game, and so, yes, I will be the first to admit there's a lot of nostalgic value in this game, but I've been playing it a lot recently, and I still really love it. What you're doing in this game is you're trying to take control over a series of islands, and the way that you're going to be getting control of those islands is by building bridges between them. And so every island has a different number of bridges that go in and out of the island. And as soon as you have the majority of bridges, you are going to take control of that island by placing a control token in the center of it. But the thing that makes this game really interesting is that when you do take control of an island, it essentially gets rid of, annihilates, blows up, whatever you want to call it, the opponent's bridges that were also going out of that island. So if you were both vying for control of an island and then all of a sudden I get that, 3 out of 5 bridge and you had 2 others, Maggie's 2 bridges are going to be destroyed. But what's really interesting about that is that can have a flow-on effect because those bridges are also connected to another island that maybe Maggie controls. And so by losing those 2 bridges, it's then going to have this flow-on effect where she loses control of another island. And if I'm able to then build up, and it's really, really devastating when there is a sequence of events that means that you can lose control over a number of islands all at once. And, that's probably people's biggest criticism of the game is it can be a little bit swingy but the clever thing about this game is that you can choose to play as many cards out of your hand as you want until you decide to stop, at which point you draw a card from the market or from the top of the deck. And you are trying to therefore build up enough cards or arsenal in your hand to be able to do a whole lot of devastation at once. But you've got to time it correctly, otherwise you may miss your opportunity. You can also, if you have a pair of cards, whether that's the same island on 2 cards or the start and end of a bridge, you get to play those 2 cards and you can remove your opponent's bridge. And that's really interesting because you can remove a bridge and then straight away play another card in order to replace that bridge, take control, everything starts to explode across the game.
You can probably imagine how I feel about this game. If you have seen how I feel about, people destroying my sandcastle, kicking my sandcastle that I've been working on, particularly when you can have those blindside moments of one thing has triggered this sort of chain reaction that just means everything came crumbling down.
Yeah, and the way it scores is really interesting too. There's 3 rounds. The first round, the person with the most control of the most islands gets 1 point. In the second round, you get 2 points. In the third round, you get the difference between your number of controlled islands and your opponent if you're the person in front. So you can catch up in that third round, although if you get off to a really bad start in this game, it's pretty hard to scrape your way back. But I just really enjoy it. I love that cascading effect. I love that it is directly confrontational. It's just fun. There's a little bit of luck involved in the way that cards come out in the market. So you've got to kind of be a little bit okay with that, I would say. But it's just fun and it's over really quickly. Kahuna, I gave a 9.
Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Yeah.
I really love it. It's just so enjoyable. The cards are all very well worn,
Yeah.
Amy
box
now
is
would
well worn.
maybe put them in sleeves, but Amy back then did not, and so it's pretty destroyed. But I just love it.
I give it a 6, which is actually, I feel, very high considering all of the things that this game does and has in it that I usually tend to dislike. And the reason it's a 6 for me is because, yes, I am not the type of person who'd be like, oh, let's play a game of this. And there's so many things that happen in it that I don't like, but I actually really appreciate the design. The design is really elegant, and I keep using elegant, it's just very, very streamlined and simple, but it manages to create a lot of tension. And again, it's even though I hate when it happens to me, that flow-on effect of, all of a sudden this caused that other bridge to, that other island to be lost, and that
castles getting kicked down.
It's just very well done. So it's still low for me because it's not a game.
That's good.
But it's, well done. It's I have to do it kind of slow clap, well done.
Yeah, it is very single-minded in its, in its play style.
Yeah.
And, just love it. So check out Kahuna. The next one is a game called Unforgiven, the Lincoln assassination trial, where you are playing as either the defense or the prosecution in Mary Surratt's trial. And she was the first woman to be...
put into the death sentence to be, executed, essentially, for treason.
Yes, in the US. And so you are basically playing in this game, you are trying to find her guilty or find her innocent, and you're trying to sway jurors in this game. Now, I've put this lower in the pile because I wanted to talk about its relationship to Seven Wonders Duel.
Yes.
It has taken a lot of inspiration from that game, which is a game we love, but it uses the same card drafting mechanic. So it has that pyramid style, whatever you want to call it, with the cards that are face up and face down and layered on top of each other, so that the cards later in the stack are not available until you remove the ones that are on top of them. And so you can kind of see a little bit of what's coming, but you don't have full information because some of them are face down. And in this game, you're going to be collecting cards in order to collect the right resources to sway the jurors. Now, you'll have some jurors in front of you, which are jurors that only you can sway. But then there are also jurors on the board that are these series of tug-of-war type tracks, where once you can pay the resources, they're going to move slightly towards
inch
your
a bit
opponent.
slower, and little by little.
Towards yourself. And then once they fall off, that juror has been swayed to your side. And basically there are different end game conditions, just like in Seven Wonders Duel, where the game can end suddenly if you meet certain conditions. There's also these really interesting dice that also give you resources that you can utilize. They also allow you to shout objection.
I object by putting I think it's 3 dice of the
three
same
dice.
Same icon, the same icon
And
resource.
but when you do that, it burns those dice as in you can't use the resources from them, but it allows
it's very dramatic. dramatic and
it's very
satisfying.
dramatic, and it allows you to stop your opponent's move. So yeah, very thematic and very cool little thing.
And you can object to the objection as well. So it's like that's a lot of dice spent, wasted.
Out of the game.
But again, a super dramatic moment. So yeah, I think this one is a really interesting one because obviously so much of it is it's very, as you said, reminiscent of mechanically like Seven Wonders Duel, but thematically I find the theme a lot more confronting. I find that I don't tend to resonate as much with trial-based themes. There's other games that we play that are quite similar, also like two-player games where you're kind of doing that. And I don't know, there's an element that I kind of, I just thematically don't connect with it as much. Also, with this game, regardless of whether you're playing the prosecution or the defense, it plays pretty much the same. It's not, you don't actually feel a true asymmetry in terms of like, yes, obviously your objective is going, to one end as opposed to the other.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which way.
But gameplay-wise, it's exactly the same.
It's exactly
so it's a game that I appreciate. I appreciate that. Obviously, if you like the theme, using that skinning as the way of the things kind of play out.
And there's different to Seven Wonders.
Yeah.
Certainly different levers, different things that you're doing. It just the drafting mechanic is the same, and you're fighting over different things. But I don't know about this game as well. It doesn't have the vibrancy as well that, it's kind of a muted game. So I'm not that excited when I see it on the table.
I like that they colored the images though. So it's obviously like a lot of the photographs and stuff that are, I imagine a lot of them are, things that are in the public domain of the actual, people of the time. But they've done the coloring of them. So at least it pops more than if it was just, black and white
that's
things.
true.
And this is an interesting one because it's something that when I first played, I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of quite cool and interesting. Over time, though, as it's sort of been sitting on the shelf, I've noticed it's like because of the theme, and I'm not connecting with the theme as much. It's not something that I ever feel like wanting to get off the shelf.
And if I want to scratch that itch, I'll probably reach for Seven Wonders Duel. So unfortunately for me, that means it doesn't have a strong occasion for it. And so what did I give this? I gave it a 7. I thought I had a lot of fun playing it. It's probably one that I would move on now just because I've got the Seven Wonders Duel.
I would agree with that. I gave it a 7 as well. So again, it's like it's I feel like it's again solid game.
Solid game.
I just don't connect with the theme, and so that's why it kind of sits in that space. And I would totally be like moving it on to a household.
I liked learning about the theme. I remember, during the Kickstarter and everything, I was like, this is really fascinating. Read up a lot about Mary Surratt, so I feel like I've had my time with it. I've learned what I needed to learn from it.
Flavor text on the cards as well.
So that is Unforgiven, the Lincoln assassination trial. If you're into historical themes, you might really enjoy that one. Maybe even more than Seven Wonders Duel.
Ooh.
Your next one.
All right. So the next one is Haven. So this is a game that we picked up in one of our more recent trips to the US because this was this I think we got it from Barnes & Noble. I think it might have been like a Barnes & Noble exclusive.
Not sure.
Like
we couldn't get it in Australia, so we picked it up.
It's easily found in Australia, and obviously illustrated by Ryan Lockett, which I love. I love that.
And it's his
artwork.
publishing house too, Red Raven Games. So as soon as you saw that, we're like, well, we have to try it.
Yeah, and it's a 2-player game, and so we're like, let's check it out. So in Haven, you are playing as either the forest or the city, vying for kind of control of this mystical forest land. So you're essentially either the city trying to take over or the forest kind of defending and making sure that you keep it the way it is. What's happened is almost like the guardian of the Haven forest is now asleep. I think it's they're too old, and so it's now coming down to us to vie for get the influence of these elementals. So there's like the stone, water, and leaf elementals, which are like this sort of creatures that kind of move around the central board to get these sort of lore tokens, which means that eventually we're going to get points and determine whether or not city side wins or the forest side wins. So it's technically asymmetric in terms. It's not really. I think in terms of the way that it plays, you have a couple of slightly different.
Because the power cards are different depending on
true.
Whether you're playing the city or the forest, and also the way that ties are broken is different depending on whether you're the forest or the city.
That's true. Yeah.
And
I haven't actually talked about what you actually do though. Yes. So you have these sort of central lore tiles, which are for the 3 different what do you call it? The elementals. Yeah. So you've got the water, the leaf, and the stone. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be playing seekers, which are these sort of kind of creature type cards, onto those rows on the side that you belong to try and vie for control of that lore token. So it's interesting because there's a couple of different things going on. One, you're going to be playing seekers that have a different value, like a numeric value, but also swords. So it's almost like there's the influence value with the number, but the swords are going to be for like the combat of control. So if, as you're playing them, you can either play them like they either get played face up if they're kind of coming straight from the deck, which means that you have no idea what's going to be showing up there because it's sort of like a surprise. It was this number, or you can play them face down if it's coming from your hand. The reason it's a bit tricky if it's sort of being played from the deck is you can bust. You can actually have if your total number of the influence of your seekers is higher than that lore token, then it's like those elementals are a bit poor off, but by your incessant almost neediness, or like you're being too intense about it. Right. And so you kind of have to then clear off and because
cards. Some of the cards can be played, some of the seekers can be played face down. There's that element of like not knowing what your total sum of your opponent is, and so you're trying to be like, well, are they going to have more control and more power here, more swords here? I think it's a really interesting combination of things because as you win as well, those tokens. So the person who has the most points in each of those rows when they get activated is going to get the token itself. But the person who has the most swords is playing this area control game. And much like a game that we just spoke about, Kahuna, it's about getting the most, what do they call, shrines around a thematically.
The haven. I think the havens, which are they're like the regions.
The regions. In order to place one of your control tokens there, and that's going to be worth points at the end of the game. There's so much going on here, but I think it is really interesting that there is the area majority game going on, then there's the area control game that's going on, and the way that those interact with each other, because you've got those guardians or whatever they are that are the elementals that are moving around, and they're going to dictate where you are going to be able to place a token for the area control game, but that's dictated by which set of cards you're going to win in that area. And so there's kind of this working out where they are and how much you want that, and whether there's also like the players are in control of which one of the elements is triggering as well. So there's just so much to talk about here. There's lots of layers.
Which is actually, we haven't said that. So the thing that triggers them is like these cards that are the offerings, and you're always forced to or required to play one at the end of your turn. And so sometimes it's as soon as one of those elements has 3 offering cards on it, then that's what triggers the count to go, okay, well, who wins the token and who gets that control on the board. So that also adds another little element of like, you can sometimes, if you have a lot of different offering cards in your hand, you get to decide, hey, I want to trigger this one because I know that I'm already winning it, or going, oh no, like this, I'm forced to trigger this even though I know that, Amy's definitely going to win that. So that adds another interesting element of manipulation.
And there's also power cards that when you play them on your turn, they have, these like really powerful abilities, but you only get to use your deck of power cards once, throughout the whole game. And so, I don't know, it's a really, really interesting. I found the hardest thing about this game was getting into it because the rule book itself is a very, very thematically driven.
And there's a lot of terms.
Yes, there's a lot of terms to get used. What's a haven? What's a shrine? What's an elemental? What's the, and so there were lots of different, an offering. So there's lots of different names, and those are used very strongly throughout the rule book, which meant it, for me personally, that makes it really hard to get into a game. And so I was quite frustrated with this game at the beginning. But as we kind of pieced it together, it does have a lot of what I like. I love majority area control. I like
never won a game of this.
No, you haven't. But I liked the, thinking ahead of which different element is going to trigger, and then where you're placing out those little people, not the people, the elementals.
Shrines, or the elemental kind of
characters.
The guard. There's also this other little element that you can bring in for the advanced game of these like hidden artifacts. So they are things that you can win, and they can either be face down or face up, depending on how you want to play the game. But there are these things that you can win if you play a seeker. So the seekers, you know how they all have values. If you play the same value across all the different, the 3 different elements, which again becomes this other like almost like hand management and, you know, renegotiating of your balancing of your seekers, on top of wanting to not bust, but also trying to win them to get, you know, these little powers. That means usually either, you know, a point or an end game advantage. But I found that it's like I was really good at getting those, but it took my eye off the ball so much that then it's like by the time I was like, yeah, I got all of these, it's like, oh, but Amy has like 1,000,000 points more than me. Yeah. But it is another way of kind of, spicing up the game. Yeah. I agree that there's a lot, you know, it's one of those games that there's a lot of things kind of going on.
I'm just laughing because I feel like this was the worst explanation of a game that we've probably done this entire series. Yeah. And if you're listening to this, you're probably like, I still have no idea how that's played. And that's kind of the feeling that it gives you when you're trying to get into it. And for me, a 2-player game, you know, something you'll see that the games that we've talked about, most of them are quite single-minded, and it's like nice and easy to get them to the table. I didn't find this particularly easy to get to the table, but it did get better and better the more we played it. So I did enjoy that, and it had me kind of thinking about it afterwards, which is always a nice thing. But would I get it out on the table ahead of other games that are like maybe a bit easier to get to the table, like something like Kahuna that scratches that area control itch? This is like that, and then plus 1,000,000 other things. So there's a lot going on in here, and I do feel like it would be difficult to teach it to someone, and also between games I'd probably forget how it plays.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it would be one of those that you'd have to keep referencing, oh, what does this bit do again and that bit do again. So I'd play this over Kahuna, because at least like I love the artwork in this, and I love like the sort of the table presence of it, even though I always lose. But I agree that it's sort of in this bizarre in between where it's like it's a bit too convoluted to just sort of, you know, bring out on the table, but at the same time it's not like the layers of crunchiness is not like some of the other games that are actually more straightforward, that feel like you're actually leveraging a lot more of like your brain power.
That's good though.
Ways.
And I think
it's not a bad game. Yeah.
Also, we're not really into the fantasy thing.
Yes, I think if you're into that lore type thing, you would enjoy this.
And you like these mechanics, I think you really enjoy it. I gave it a 7. It's a game that I'm torn about whether to keep it, because I did like it more and more the more we played it, but I do worry about its longevity in our collection.
I gave it a 6.6, so it is lower for me. Now you kind of you always know that and it makes me kind of go like double check. Yeah, no, I gave it a 6.6 because I think the thing that I enjoyed the most about this is the artwork, and the table presence. But the actual gameplay of it, even though I don't mind it, it's like there's none of those elements are things that I tend to resonate with.
I also really like the tie-breaking thing. How I mentioned at the beginning, the city and the forest have different tie-breakers. So the city, who are the aggressors, they will break ties with the swords in the area control game, and then the forest, who's, you know, just trying to be peaceful, they break ties in like attracting lore or the lore tokens, which are the 2 main scoring components in the game. And so I liked that element. I thought that mechanically it is quite clever. It's just the layers and layers of theme that have been placed on top of that. I almost wish it was, if this had been stripped back a little bit, I probably would really, really love this game. But it's a bit...
Also because then it makes it,
thematically...
Well,
I don't know.
Well,
I feel like I'm drowning in the theme a little bit.
Well, and I feel like it's almost like had it been stripped back a little bit, it would make it more accessible, either as a more of a gateway game for new players or even for like younger players and family. But as it stands, it's like it's a little bit too much for someone new. You kind of have to have someone more in between. So I think this was really going to be more about if people love that theme, then...
And a new rulebook, please. So
more images in the rulebook, actually. That's what I think I stumble with. Because a lot of times, because they're only using the thematic names for things, and there's a lot of them, it was hard to keep track. All right, so that was Haven.
That's Haven. And the last game for this episode is Radlands. This is the deluxe edition that you're looking at. It usually comes in a smaller white box. It is a card game for 2 players only, and it is a battle style game where you are now in this post-apocalyptic world where the main currency is water, and we need to make sure we are protecting our water and going after our opposing factions' water as well.
You know, and they say offense is the best defense, because you've got your 3 camps that you're trying to protect, and at the same time your opponent is going to be coming and trying to destroy your camp, so you have to destroy their camps first.
And the first player to destroy your opponent's 3 camps is going to win the game. And the way that you're going to be doing that is by attacking your opponent using different cards. One of them is there's this interesting event track where you are going to play out an attack card, but it's going to only move towards your opponent over a number of turns. And so they can see it coming, and they can see what effect it's going to have, and so they can prepare themselves. And the way that you're going to prepare yourselves is generally by playing cards in front of your camps, so directly in front of them in the columns in front, to protect them, because your people that are protecting your camps are going to be able to take damage, but they also have their own powers as well that you can activate using water, because water is the main currency in this game. And your amount of water that you have is going to dictate how many of those actions you can play out. And also they're multi-use cards too. So instead of playing a person card into your tableau, you can actually junk it to get other things done.
Yeah, other resources as well. And so this is a game that, you know, it's the thing that first attracted me most to this is the aesthetic of it. I absolutely love this almost like fluorescent, just really like saturated colors. The artwork is incredible of it, not just even on the inside of the box. I think I'm gonna try. There's always a tricky thing of like when you open, so you have no idea what you're gonna find, but it's like, and even on the inside of the box, this is actually, if you don't get the deluxe edition, it would come in just like, this is how compact it is, like the entire game is just in here. I love the aesthetic of this. This is a game that goes against everything that I think I would know and believe about myself, because even though it's got all of those, it's got that direct attack and direct confrontation, it is very much about just, you know, attacking and defending.
Yeah, but I think also it's because
this.
You're not building and building and building and building, and someone kicks your sandcastle over. It's really like, okay, I'm going to put this person out, that person gets damaged. I'm going to put another person out, and that person gets damaged. And it's like there's this constant turnover.
There's not enough time to get too attached to
you're
any
not that
one
attached
thing.
to anything.
So you're like, okay, you know, this is going to be in a high state of flux the whole time.
High destruction event cards that are happening, you get prior notification that that's going to happen.
Yeah, you have a bit of you have some time to prepare and mitigate a bit against it. Yeah.
And when you lose one camp, you still have 2 left over, and it's just really interesting. And also your starting camps have these unique abilities, which kind of creates this asymmetry at the beginning of the game, depending on which of the camps that you have available to you.
And then it should, if you're a good player, which I'm sometimes not very good at this, it should dictate your strategy, but also they dictate how many cards you start the game with, which can be a huge determining factor, because the cards really are like everything.
So do you want more powerful camps and fewer cards, or more cards and less powerful
kind of
camps?
basic abilities then ongoing?
It's really good. It's a beautiful design, and it's really well contained as well. Like there's lots of variability in the cards. It is beautiful to look at. If you've got, we've got the neoprene mats which fit inside this deluxe box. It looks beautiful on the table. I love it too. And it's not usually my style of game where you're battling and you're tapping cards and all of that. I don't know. That's just not my thing, really.
I've never resonated with those games, but this is the outlier. This is the one that breaks all of those rules for me.
It is a great game, and I gave it 8. I really enjoy it. I will never say no to it. It's not a game where I'm like, oh my goodness, I want to play Radlands and I want to get into the strategy and just like be obsessed with all the different cards and memorizing what's on them. It's just a game that I think is excellent, and I would love to play it anytime Maggie wants to play it, because Maggie's score is going to be higher, guaranteed.
I'll give a pause and say, what do you think my score is going to be? You don't have to type it in the comments, because obviously I'm about to say it.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me.
No, but
I do think it's going to be a lot higher.
It's a 9 for me.
Yep.
This
Might
should
make it
not
to your top
be.
10.
Yeah, this is like, there's everything that happens in this game. It should not make sense that it would be this high for me, but I just really, really resonate with this game. So I just love, I think it's just the aesthetic and the fact that it just kind of happens so quickly. And again, I tend to usually lose at this game, but I don't care. Like every time I just have such a great time with it. So
it's also
9.
fun.
Radlands.
That is Radlands. So
all the games.
That's 10 two-player only games, but we have many more of those in our collection. We won't do it next week, but we'll certainly have another episode that is all two-player games. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you got some ideas of things that you could play, in a household of 2. It's always nice to have some of those games lying around. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now. Bye.